It was a quiet spring evening in Dorset, April 7, 2021, at the Grandmore Hill Estate in Higher Langham. One of England's wealthiest landowners, Sir Richard Sutton, 9th Baronet, lived with his partner, Anne Schreiber. That night would end in unimaginable tragedy. But the story begins long before that day. Anne's son, Thomas Schreiber, had been living at Moorhill, rent-free ever since her separation from his father, David Schreiber, who had died in 2013. On the surface, Thomas's life seemed privileged. Sir Richard had provided him a generous £1,000 monthly allowance and even £100,000 toward a house deposit. Yet beneath the surface, Thomas carried a storm of bitterness and resentment. He believed his father had been wronged, he despised his mother's relationship with Sir Richard and felt abandoned, financially trapped and unloved. These feelings of anger often turned violent. In 2019, during an argument, Thomas lashed out. He punched his mother after she called him a leech. That Christmas, another row erupted, this time about driving arrangements. He struck Sir Richard, leaving him with a black eye. And in November 2020, the bitterness grew darker. An argument broke out over the inheritance of a chandelier. Thomas punched one of his sisters. Sir Richard, trying to intervene, struck Thomas with a walking stick, but the stick snapped. For Thomas, that moment became a watershed. From then on, he admitted he nursed thoughts of hatred and revenge. April 7, 2021. 8 years since his father's death. Thomas began the day by visiting his father's grave, a ritual heavy with meaning. Returning to the estate, he painted quietly through the afternoon. Later, he even shared a conversation with Sir Richard about his late father. But when Anne came home that evening from her own visit to the grave, things turned dark. According to Thomas, she looked at him and remarked, "You're drunk, just like your father." Those words lit the fuse. Furious and intoxicated, later tests showed him to be 3 times over the legal drink drive limit, Thomas punched his mother. Anne recalled being in the kitchen when she saw her son standing there, but this time with a knife in his hand. She described his eyes as terribly determined and out of control. He lunged. He stabbed his mother again and again. Later, Thomas would say a voice in his head shouted, "Attack! Attack!" Sir Richard tried to intervene, but Thomas turned on him too. He stabbed the 83-year-old baronet multiple times. Even after the first attack, when Sir Richard managed to stagger upstairs, Thomas followed. On the landing outside the bedroom, he struck again. 5 brutal wounds to the chest. The blade pierced his lung and his heart. Sir Richard Sutton, one of Britain's richest men, lay dying in his own home. Anne, gravely injured with 15 stab wounds, one of which partially severed her spinal cord, collapsed in the kitchen. Covered in blood, Thomas sat on the sofa, believing that he had killed them both. Then, he fled, driving away in Sir Richard's Range Rover. He left behind haunting voice messages to family and friends. "I've killed my mother and I've killed her partner, and this is the last you'll ever hear from me. I'm so sorry. I had to take action." His girlfriend, disturbed after receiving a large money transfer from him, contacted the police. Meanwhile, officers rushed to the estate, finding Anne barely alive and airlifting her to Southmead Hospital. She would survive, but paralyzed. Sir Richard was already dead. Thomas tried to escape. He led police on a high-speed chase across several counties before being stopped on Chiswick High Court in London. During the arrest, he stabbed himself and begged officers to kill him. Instead, he was tasered, restrained, and taken to hospital for treatment. In court, Thomas denied murder. He admitted to manslaughter, claiming he was under the influence of demons in his head and driven by the pressures of family conflict and the COVID-19 lockdown. He pleaded guilty only to manslaughter, dangerous driving, and nothing more. But the evidence was overwhelming. In December 2021, a jury at Winchester Crown Court found him guilty of the murder of Sir Richard Sutton and the attempted murder of Anne Schreiber. The judge's words were scathing. He said Thomas's actions caused utter devastation, born of a breathtaking sense of entitlement and complete disrespect toward the people who had supported him. Thomas Schreiber was sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum of 36 years. His attempts to appeal both conviction and sentence were dismissed. And so what began as a tale of privilege and opportunity at Moorhill ended in betrayal, bloodshed, and the destruction of a family. Sir Richard Sutton lost his life. Anne Schreiber survived, but her world was shattered. And Thomas Schreiber, fueled by resentment and rage, now lives out his days behind bars.